Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's edge, his 6 eyes fixed on the blue-green world rotating slowly in the viewscreen. Earth! Such a small, insignificant sphere, yet it had become the focal point of the Empire's latest expansion directive. The planet's electromagnetic signatures indicated a primitive civilization, one that would be swept away like dust before a storm. Scans confirmed the intelligence reports. Commander reported his tactical officer, her voice carrying the clinical detachment typical of Vaeltharian military doctrine. Approximately 8 billion inhabitants. Technology level, pre-interstellar. No defensive orbital platforms detected. No shield generators of significant power. Zethkar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The Empire had faced resistance before, species that fought with desperate courage when cornered. But those civilizations had possessed at least rudimentary spacefaring capabilities, energy weapons, or unified planetary defenses. This world had none of those advantages. Deployment status of the fleet, he inquired, his primary arms clasped behind his back in the traditional pose of Imperial authority. All 700 vessels are in position. Commander, dreadnoughts have powered their planet crackers. The bombardment grid is established. We await your command to commence surface sterilization. Through the massive transparent steel windows, Zethkar could see the assembled might of Battle Group Terminus stretching across the void. Sleek destroyers flanked massive dreadnoughts, their hulls gleaming with the distinctive crimson and gold of Imperial colors. Support vessels hung in perfect formation, ready to deploy atmospheric processes once the cleansing was complete. It was a sight that had broken the spirit of countless worlds. On Earth's surface, the first signs of panic were already spreading. Primitive telescopes and basic radar installations had detected the fleet's emergence from hyperspace. Electromagnetic communications traffic spiked dramatically as the inhabitants realized they were no longer alone in the universe, and that their visitors had not come bearing gifts. Commander, we're intercepting increasing communication bursts from the surface, the communications officer reported. Multiple languages, but our translators are adapting quickly. The inhabitants appear to be attempting to contact us. Ignore them, Zethkar ordered without hesitation. The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. Their extinction serves a greater purpose of Imperial expansion. But even as he spoke, something in the chaotic burst of signals gave him pause. The inhabitants weren't just panicking, they were organizing. Military frequencies crackled with orders and coordinates. Scientific channels buzzed with desperate calculations. Most remarkably, despite facing annihilation, they weren't surrendering. Dr. Sarah Chen burst through the doors of NORAD's command center, her security badge still swinging from the sprint across the facility. The massive screens displaying tracking data made her blood freeze. 700 contacts, all confirmed hostile by their formation and the energy signatures bleeding from their weapon systems. How long do we have? She gasped to General Morrison, who stood rigid at the central command console. Initial bombardment begins in 37 minutes, Morrison replied, his weathered face grim. They are positioning for maximum coverage. Complete surface sterilization. Sarah's mind raced through the calculations she'd been running since the first detection. The kinetic energy alone from their positioning will crack the tectonic plates. Even if we somehow survive the initial bombardment, the geological aftermath would finish the job. Then we make those 37 minutes count, Morrison said, turning to face the assembled officers. Launch everything. Every nuclear weapon, every conventional missile, every satellite with a propulsion system. I don't care if it's a weather balloon with firecrackers strapped to it. Get it into space. Around the globe, similar scenes played out in command centers and military installations. The revelation that humanity was not alone had lasted exactly 43 seconds before being overshadowed by the reality that they were about to be extinct. Yet instead of despair, a strange calm descended over military leaders worldwide. They had trained for the unthinkable. This was simply more unthinkable than anticipated. Aboard the Dominion's edge, Zethkar watched with mild interest as primitive rockets began launching from the planet's surface. Dozens, then hundreds of small projectiles streaked upward, their chemical propulsion systems pathetically inadequate for the vast distances of space combat. "Shall we intercept them, Commander?" asked the tactical officer. "Let them waste their ammunition," Zethkar replied. "Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields. This display of defiance will be brief." But as the minutes passed, something unexpected happened. The primitive missiles weren't following predictable ballistic trajectories. They were maneuvering, adjusting course with precision that suggested sophisticated guidance systems. More disturbing, they were coordinating, forming attack patterns that demonstrated tactical awareness. "Commander!" the sensor operator called out, her voice carrying a note of concern. "The projectiles are carrying nuclear warheads. Estimated yield, 20 to 50 megatons each." Zethkar's confidence wavered slightly. Nuclear weapons were crude, but in sufficient numbers they could overwhelm even Imperial shields. He watched as Earth's desperate salvo approached, noting the way the missiles spread out to maximize coverage while maintaining mutual support patterns. The first wave struck the outer perimeter vessels. Brilliant nuclear fires blossomed against energy shields, their fury absorbed and dissipated. But the humans had learned something crucial in those first moments of contact. The shield frequencies flickered during high-energy impacts, creating microsecond windows of vulnerability. The second wave exploited those windows with surgical precision. "Direct hit on the Retribution," reported the tactical officer, shock evident in her voice. "Shield failure on multiple vessels. The primitives are adapting their attack patterns in real time." Zethkar stared at the tactical display as 3 Imperial destroyers listed helplessly, their hulls breached by nuclear fire. In 5 minutes of combat, these supposedly primitive beings had accomplished what most spacefaring civilizations failed to achieve. They had drawn first blood against an Imperial fleet. "All vessels, return fire," he commanded, his voice steady despite the growing unease in his chest. "Begin surface bombardment immediately." The Empire's response was swift and merciless. Particle beams lanced down through Earth's atmosphere, turning cities into glass. Kinetic bombardment rounds struck with the force of asteroids, gouging craters that could be seen from orbit. The beautiful blue world began to burn. But even as Earth's surface erupted in flames, more missiles continued to launch. Not just from military installations, but from civilian launch facilities, converted cargo ships, and improvised platforms. Humanity was throwing everything they had into the void, transforming their entire civilization into a weapon pointed at the stars. And in the depths of space, as nuclear fire continued to blossom against Imperial hulls, Zethkar began to understand that he had made a fundamental miscalculation about the species he had come to exterminate. The nuclear exchange lasted 18 minutes and changed everything. When the radioactive fog cleared from the orbital battlefield, both fleets had paid a terrible price. 6 to 7 Imperial vessels drifted as wreckage, their crews either dead or dying from radiation poisoning. Earth's surface bore the scars of retaliatory bombardment. Major cities reduced to radioactive craters, entire regions scoured clean by particle beams. But Earth was still fighting. "Impossible," whispered Zethkar as damage reports flooded the command bridge. "Tactical, explain to me how primitives with chemical rockets destroyed a third of our destroyer screen." The tactical officer's normally steady voice trembled slightly. "They modified their nuclear warheads during flight. Commander, real-time adaptation of yield and detonation patterns. Their guidance systems learned our shield frequencies and began exploiting harmonic resonances we didn't know existed." Admiral Rebecca Torres stood in the emergency command bunker buried 300 meters beneath the Colorado mountains. The main NORAD facility was gone, vaporized in the first wave of the alien response, but the backup systems were functioning. Around her, officers worked frantically at survival-hardened terminals, coordinating humanity's desperate resistance. "Status report," she demanded, her voice cutting through controlled chaos. 60% of our space-capable missiles are expended," reported Colonel Matthews, his face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. "But we've confirmed kills on 6 to 7 hostiles. Their formation is breaking up." Torres allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. Humanity had blooded the alien fleet's nose, but the mathematics was still brutal. Even after their losses, the invaders possessed overwhelming superiority. The next phase would determine whether humanity's defiance had bought them time or simply guaranteed a more painful extinction. "What's our satellite network status?" she asked. 40% operational," Matthews replied. "The aliens prioritized communication satellites in their bombardment, but our hardened military constellation is mostly intact. We still have global coordination capability." "Then coordinate this," Torres said. turning to address the room. Every submarine, every underground facility, every bunker with manufacturing capability, I want them producing kinetic kill vehicles. We're going to turn our entire planet into a launch platform. On the surface, the aftermath of a nuclear exchange had transformed day into twilight. Massive fires burned unchecked in what remained of civilization centers, while radioactive snow fell from the atomized debris in the upper atmosphere. But in hidden facilities around the globe, humanity's industrial capacity was being rapidly converted to weapons production. Submarine-launched ballistic missiles received new warheads, not nuclear, but kinetic penetrators designed to punch through alien armor at relativistic speeds. Underground factories that once produced electronics began assembling guidance computers optimized for space combat. Mining equipment was retrofitted to launch or containers as improvised projectiles. Aboard the Dominion's Edge, Zethkar faced a decision that would define his career and possibly the Empire's expansion into this sector. His fleet retained the capability to complete the sterilization mission, but at a cost far higher than anticipated. More troubling, intelligence reports suggested the humans were far from defeated. "So," his intelligence officer reported, "we're detecting massive industrial activity across the planet's surface. Underground facilities are converting to military production at an unprecedented rate. They are preparing for a sustained campaign." Zethkar's six eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical projections. In his 3 decades of Imperial service, he had never encountered a species that responded to near extinction by accelerating their military production. Most civilizations collapsed into chaos when their major population centers were destroyed. These humans were doing the opposite. They were becoming more dangerous. "Estimated timeline for their next assault?" he inquired. "Unknown, sir. Their industrial capacity is unlike anything in our databases. They appear capable of mass-producing weapon systems using techniques we don't recognize." The intelligence officer paused, reviewing incoming data streams. "Sir, there's something else. We're intercepting communication from their underground facilities. They are not just coordinating military production, they're sharing scientific data, technical specifications, tactical observations, manufacturing processes. Their entire species appears to be collaborating on weapons development." Dr. Sarah Chen worked frantically in the underground laboratory complex that had once housed experimental fusion research. Now it served a different purpose, developing the theoretical framework for humanity's next weapon. Around her, scientists from every discipline collaborated with an intensity born of desperation. "The alien shield technology operates on quantum field principles," she explained to the assembled team via encrypted video link. "But we've observed frequency drift during high-energy impacts. If we can synchronize our attacks with precise timing, we can create cascade failures." Dr. Yuki Tanaka's voice crackled through the speakers from his facility in Japan. "My team has analyzed the debris from the destroyed alien vessels. Their armor uses metamaterial structures that become brittle under specific resonance frequencies. We can weaponize sound waves transmitted through their own hulls." "Integration time?" asked Dr. Chen. 7 to 2 hours, Tanaka replied, "but we'll need coordinated deployment across multiple launch platforms." Around the globe, similar conversations were taking place. Humanity's greatest minds have been focused on the problem of alien technology with a singular purpose of finding ways to destroy it. The species that had split the atom, mapped the human genome, and sent probes to the edge of the solar system was now applying that same ingenuity to the art of war. The second wave began at dawn on what might have been humanity's last day. This time, there were no massive rocket launches or obvious military preparations. Instead, the attack came from everywhere at once. Cargo containers launched from electromagnetic rail systems hidden in mine shafts. Kinetic projectiles fired from makeshift mass drivers constructed in subway tunnels. Acoustic weapons that use the aliens' own communication frequencies to shatter their hull from within. And threading through it all, a new generation of nuclear devices that had been redesigned during the brief ceasefire. Zethkar watched in stunned silence as his fleet came apart around him. The humans had learned from the first engagement and adapted with frightening speed. Their weapons were crude but ingenious, exploiting weaknesses in Imperial technology that military analysts had never even considered. "All vessels, evasive maneuvers," he commanded, but it was too late. The humans had anticipated Imperial tactics and positioned their attacks accordingly. Every escape vector was covered. Every defensive position had been compromised. The Dominion's edge shuddered as acoustic weapons turned its own communication array into a weapon against itself. Hull breaches erupted along structural weak points as resonance frequencies shattered the metamaterial armor. Emergency klaxons wailed as atmosphere vented into space. "Commander!" gasped the tactical officer, her breathing apparatus hissing as she fought to remain conscious. "We've lost 40% of the fleet. The humans are using coordinated targeting to maximize damage efficiency." Zethkar gripped the command console as another wave of attacks struck home. In all his years of Imperial service, he had never encountered an enemy that improved so rapidly under pressure. Most species became less effective as casualties mounted and infrastructure was destroyed. These humans were becoming more lethal with each passing hour. "Signal the fleet," he ordered, his voice tight with a mixture of rage and growing respect. "Prepare for close orbital bombardment. If we cannot destroy them from range, we'll move close enough to use our primary weapons." But even as he gave the order, Zethkar knew that getting closer to Earth would bring new dangers. The humans had proven they could adapt to any situation with terrifying speed. What surprises were they preparing for an enemy foolish enough to enter their planet's gravity well? The answer, he would soon discover, would redefine his understanding of what it meant to be human. The Imperial fleet descent into Earth's gravity well marked the beginning of the war's most brutal phase. As massive dreadnoughts dropped from high orbit to close bombardment range, they triggered humanity's most desperate gambit, a plan so audacious that even its creators weren't certain it would work. Commander Zethkar felt the artificial gravity fluctuate as the Dominion's edge adjusted its trajectory, diving toward the wounded planet below. The blue marble that had seemed so beautiful from deep space now appeared as a scarred battlefield, its surface marked by the geometric patterns of nuclear devastation and the random chaos of kinetic bombardment. "Range to target, 40,000 kilometers in closing," reported the navigator. "All vessels report ready for close orbital assault." The plan was simple in concept. Move close enough to Earth that their particle weapons could penetrate the planet's crust and trigger seismic events. Tectonic disruption would accomplish what direct bombardment had failed to achieve, the complete elimination of human resistance through geological catastrophe. But as the Imperial formation descended, strange readings began appearing on sensor displays across the fleet. "Commander!" the sensor operator called out, her voice carrying a note of confusion. "I'm detecting massive electromagnetic anomalies across the planet's surface. Power generation is spiking to impossible levels." Zethkar studied the incoming data with growing unease. The electromagnetic signatures were unlike anything in Imperial databases, not the chaotic patterns of a dying civilization, but the coordinated energy distribution of a species preparing for something unprecedented. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, Project Poseidon reached critical activation phase. The massive facility, built in secret over the past 72 hours using every available submarine and underwater construction robot, represented humanity's final gambit. Dr. Sarah Chen watched the activation sequence from the facility's control center, 7 kilometers beneath the ocean surface. "Fusion reactors are at full power," reported the chief engineer. "Magnetic field generators are synchronized. All systems show green across the board." The concept was theoretically sound but practically insane. By using the Earth's magnetic field as a massive coil and the planet's molten core as a conductor, humanity had turned their entire world into the largest electromagnetic weapon ever conceived. The magnetic field disruption would be catastrophic for any technology dependent on electronic systems, including both human and alien equipment. "This will kill every electronic device on the planet," Dr. Chen observed quietly. "We'll be throwing ourselves back to the pre-industrial age." "Better that than extinction," replied Admiral Torres through the hardened communication link. "Initialize the sequence." Across the globe, similar preparations were reaching culmination. Underground facilities powered by fusion reactors came online in perfect synchronization. Superconducting cables buried in ocean trenches created a planetary circuit of unimaginable scale. Satellites in stable orbit prepared to relay the electromagnetic pulse beyond Earth's atmosphere. The humans are preparing to electrocute an entire Imperial fleet using their planet as a weapon. "Sir!" The Imperial communications officer reported with growing alarm. "We're detecting coordinated power fluctuations across every continent. Whatever they are planning, it's happening now." Zethkar's mandibles clicked in frustration. Every time his fleet adapted to human tactics, the primitives revealed new capabilities that defied Imperial understanding of technological development. No species should have been able to coordinate planetary-scale engineering projects in the middle of a genocidal war. "Time to bombardment range," he demanded. 12 minutes, Commander. "Signal all vessels. Maximum acceleration. We end this before they can deploy whatever weapon they are preparing." But acceleration brought the Imperial fleet deeper into Earth's gravity well, exactly where humanity needed them to be. The activation began at precisely 1437 Greenwich Mean Time. Fusion reactors buried on every continent released their stored energy into the planetary circuit, turning Earth's magnetic field into a weapon that could reach into space itself. The effect was visible from orbit as aurora patterns exploded across the entire planet, turning the world into a glowing sphere of electromagnetic fury. The pulse hit the Imperial fleet like a physical blow. Ships that had withstood nuclear bombardment and kinetic impact suddenly found their systems failing as electromagnetic warfare tore through their circuits. Navigation computers crashed, weapon systems went offline, and life support began fluctuating as a planet-sized pulse disrupted every electronic system within 50,000 kilometers. "All systems failing," screamed the Imperial tactical officer as sparks erupted from control panels throughout the bridge. "Navigation offline. Weapons offline, communication systems down." The Dominion's edge lurched as its gravity generators failed, sending crew members tumbling across the command deck. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in a hellish red glow as a massive dreadnought began falling toward the planet it had come to destroy. But the electromagnetic pulse was only the beginning of humanity's counterattack. As Imperial ships struggled with system failures, orbital platforms that had been hidden among the debris of destroyed satellites activated. These platforms had been hardened against electromagnetic warfare and loaded with the deadliest weapons humanity could produce in 72 hours. Kinetic kill vehicles launched from hidden platforms, their targeting systems locked onto the electromagnetic signatures of the struggling Imperial vessels. Nuclear warheads that had been modified for close-range detonation streaked toward targets that could no longer evade or defend themselves effectively. The orbital battle became a massacre as humanity's hidden weapons found their marks. Imperial ships, their shields failing and their weapons offline, were systematically destroyed by weapons they couldn't even detect until impact. The magnificent fleet that had emerged from hyperspace to crush Earth was being torn apart by an enemy that refused to accept defeat. Aboard the Dominion's edge, Zethkar fought to maintain control as his flagship fell toward Earth's atmosphere. The electromagnetic pulse had damaged their main engines, and backup systems were failing under continued electromagnetic bombardment from the planet's surface. "Engineering report," he demanded, his voice barely audible over the sound of failing systems and emergency klaxons. "Main power at 30%. The chief engineer gasped, her breathing apparatus sparking from electromagnetic interference. "Engines are responding, but we're losing altitude. Estimate atmospheric entry in 15 minutes. Around the bridge, his officers worked frantically at manual controls, trying to restore basic functionality to their weapons and navigation systems. But the electromagnetic warfare continued, waves of disruption rolling up from the planet's surface to prevent any recovery. "So," the tactical officer reported, "fleet status is catastrophic. We've lost over 200 ships to the initial pulse and follow-up attacks. Remaining vessels are struggling with system failures and orbital decay." Zethkar stared at the tactical display as it flickered between static and barely readable data. In less than an hour, these supposedly primitive humans had reduced the Empire's finest battle group to a collection of falling debris. The species he had come to exterminate had turned their entire planet into a weapon and used it to devastating effect. But as the Dominion's edge fell toward Earth's atmosphere, trailing plasma from its damaged hull, Zethkar realized that the humans had made one critical miscalculation. Their electromagnetic weapon had been designed to disable Imperial technology, but it had also devastated their own electronic infrastructure. Both civilizations were now reduced to the most primitive forms of warfare, and the battle for Earth was about to become very personal indeed. The massive Imperial dreadnought began its final descent, its hull glowing cherry red from atmospheric friction. On the surface below, humans watched through radiation-hardened telescopes as their enemy fell toward them like a meteor of alien metal and fury. The war for Earth was about to come home. The Dominion's edge struck the Earth's atmosphere like a 20-kilometer sword of molten metal, its hull screaming through the air as electromagnetic storms raged across the planet's surface. Commander Zethkar braced himself against the command console as gravitational forces that would have crushed most species pressed down on his reinforced carapace. Hull integrity holding at 60%, reported the damage control officer, her voice strained as she fought against the crushing deceleration. Atmospheric entry in 90 seconds. Landing zone appears to be a major population center. Through the view screen, Zethkar could see the sprawling metropolis of New York City growing larger with terrifying speed. The electromagnetic pulse had darkened most of the city, but fires burned throughout the urban landscape, marking where secondary explosions and system failures had taken their toll on human infrastructure. Emergency landing protocols, he commanded. All personnel prepare for ground operations. The concept was unprecedented in Imperial military doctrine. Dreadnoughts were space-based weapons platforms, never designed for planetary operations. But as the ship's massive bulk plowed through Earth's atmosphere, Zethkar realized that traditional warfare had ended the moment these humans turned their planet into a weapon. The impact was cataclysmic. The Dominion's edge struck Central Park with the force of a small asteroid, its momentum carving a crater 3 kilometers long and half a kilometer deep. Seismic waves rippled through Manhattan's bedrock, toppling buildings weakened by the electromagnetic bombardment and turning the urban landscape into a maze of rubble and twisted metal. But the Dreadnought's armored hull had been designed to withstand the fury of space combat. Though battered and scarred, the massive vessel remained largely intact, its bulk now forming a metallic mountain in the heart of humanity's greatest city. Colonel Sarah Martinez crouched behind the ruins of the Chrysler Building, her night vision scope trained on the alien ship that had literally fallen from the sky. Around her, survivors of the 1st Infantry Division checked their weapons and prepared for the most unconventional urban warfare scenario in military history. Radio check, she whispered into her hardened communication system, one of the few electronic devices still functioning after the global electromagnetic pulse. Alpha Company, ready, came the first response. Bravo Company, in position. Charlie Company, locked and loaded. Martinez smiled grimly. The electromagnetic weapon had crippled both sides' advanced technology, reducing the conflict to the kind of close-quarters combat that humans had been perfecting for millennia. If the aliens wanted to fight on Earth's surface, they would discover why humanity had conquered their own planet through 10,000 years of warfare. All companies, this is actual, she broadcast. Welcome to New York. You are now defending American soil against alien invasion. Make them regret every step they take on our planet. Inside the Dominion's edge, emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as Zethkar surveyed his situation. The ship's main systems were offline, life support was functioning on backup power, and external sensors indicated that the vessel was surrounded by the ruins of a major human settlement. More concerning, electromagnetic interference was preventing communication with other Imperial vessels. Crew status report, he demanded. 40% casualties from the crash landing, reported the medical officer. But we have over 3,000 combat-capable personnel. Ground assault equipment is functional. The electromagnetic pulse didn't affect our personal weapons or combat armor. Zethkar's 6 eyes glittered with predatory satisfaction. If these humans wanted to fight on the ground, he would give them a lesson in Imperial close-quarters combat doctrine. His warriors had conquered a dozen worlds in hand-to-hand fighting, and their enhanced physiology gave them significant advantages over baseline humanoids. Deploy all ground forces, he ordered. Establish a perimeter around the vessel and begin systematic elimination of human resistance. No prisoners, no mercy. The first Imperial ground forces emerged from the Dreadnought's hull like metallic insects spilling from a hive. Standing 3 meters tall and equipped with powered armor that shrugged off small arms fire, they began their advance through the rubble-strewn streets of Manhattan with methodical precision. But they quickly discovered that urban warfare on Earth operated by different rules than conquest campaigns on other worlds. The first squad to venture beyond Central Park was eliminated by a sniper team positioned in the ruins of a skyscraper 2 kilometers away. Kinetic penetrators fired from .50 caliber rifles punched through Imperial armor at carefully selected weak points, dropping alien warriors before they could identify the source of the attack. "Contact left," screamed an Imperial squad leader as muzzle flashes erupted from hidden positions throughout the urban maze. Human infantry, multiple positions. The humans had turned every ruined building into a fortress, every street corner into a killing ground. They used the rubble of their own civilization as cover, moving through underground tunnels and destroyed subway systems to strike from unexpected angles. Private First Class David Kim pressed himself against the concrete wall of a demolished storefront, his assault rifle trained on the intersection where Imperial forces were advancing. Around him, members of his squad prepared improvised explosive devices constructed from civilian materials, fertilizer, fuel, and electronic timers salvaged from ruined buildings. "IED in position," whispered Specialist Rodriguez through their tactical radio. "Targets approaching from the north." Kim watched through his scope as a squad of alien warriors rounded the corner, their powered armor gleaming despite the coating of dust and debris. They moved with the confidence of apex predators, apparently unaware that they were walking into a carefully prepared trap. "Initiate," Kim whispered. The explosion turned the intersection into a crater, sending chunks of concrete and twisted metal flying in all directions. The Imperial squad disappeared in a cloud of smoke and debris, their advanced armor no match for the crude but effective human explosive devices. But for every alien killed, more emerged from the dreadnought. The humans were fighting with desperate courage, but Zefkar's forces possessed superior numbers, advanced weaponry, and enhanced physical capabilities. Slowly but steadily, the Imperial perimeter expanded outward from Central Park. As night fell over the ruined city, the character of the battle changed. The humans revealed their greatest advantage. They knew every street, every building, every hiding place in their urban environment. They struck from sewers and subway tunnels, disappeared into building foundations, and used their intimate knowledge of the city to outmaneuver enemies who possessed superior technology, but no understanding of the terrain. Zefkar studied tactical reports from his command post inside the dreadnought, his frustration growing with each casualty report. His forces were designed for open battlefield combat, not the endless maze of close-quarters engagements that characterized urban warfare on this world. "Casualties?" he inquired. 800 dead, 1,200 wounded, reported his tactical officer. "The humans are using guerrilla tactics, striking from concealment and withdrawing before we can respond effectively. And our advancement? Minimal. We control approximately 6 square kilometers around the crash site, but every advance costs significant personnel. The humans appear to have unlimited hiding places and keep replenishing their forces from underground positions." Zefkar's mandibles clicked in annoyance. These creatures were proving as difficult to exterminate on the ground as they had been in space. But he possessed one advantage they couldn't counter: time. His forces could fight indefinitely, while human casualties were irreplaceable. Also, he thought, until the first human reinforcements arrived. Colonel Martinez watched through binoculars as military vehicles approached from the north, their engines converted to run on alcohol fuel distilled from civilian sources. The electromagnetic pulse had destroyed most electronic systems, but mechanical engines could still function with manual controls. "Identification," she asked the radio operator. 82nd Airborne. "They've been fighting their way through from New Jersey. And they're not alone. We've got Marines coming up from the south, National Guard from the west." Martinez smiled as she watched the reinforcements deploy throughout the urban battlefield. The aliens had made a fundamental error in understanding human warfare. They had assumed that destroying communication networks would prevent coordination, but humans had been fighting organized battles long before the invention of radio. The battle for New York was about to become the battle for Earth's survival, and humanity was bringing everything they had to the fight. As dawn broke over the devastated city, both sides prepared for the climactic engagement that would determine whether Earth would remain humanity's home or become the Empire's newest conquest. Dawn broke over Manhattan like a spotlight illuminating the aftermath of apocalypse. The electromagnetic pulse had silenced the city's electronic heartbeat, but the fires of war burned brighter than ever. From his command post atop the partially collapsed Empire State Building, Colonel Martinez surveyed a battlefield that defied every tactical manual ever written. The alien dreadnought dominated the center of the combat zone like a metallic mountain, its hull scarred but intact. Around it, concentric rings of destruction marked where human and alien forces had clashed throughout the night. But something had changed in the pre-dawn hours, something that shifted the entire dynamic of the ground war. Reported Sergeant Chen, his face grim as he approached with a field radio. "We're getting reports from reconnaissance teams. The aliens aren't just fighting us anymore. They are fighting each other." Martinez raised the binoculars, focusing on the alien perimeter where Imperial forces were supposed to be maintaining their defensive positions. Instead, she saw chaos. Groups of alien warriors engaged in firefights with their own kind, their formation discipline completely broken. Inside the Dominion's edge, Commander Zethkar faced a crisis that threatened to destroy his command more effectively than any human weapon. The electromagnetic pulse that had disabled his ship systems had also disrupted the neural control implants that maintained discipline among his diverse alien forces. The Imperial military relied on cybernetic enhancement to coordinate troops from dozens of conquered species. Without those control systems, ancient hatreds and species conflict were erupting throughout his ranks. The Kithrans were settling old scores with the Vaelthar contingent. The genetically modified Rothak soldiers were reverting to their pre-conquest tribal instincts. Status report, Zethkar demanded, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. Civil warfare in sections 7 through 12. Reported his second-in-command, a battle-scarred Vaelthar whose own control implants flickered intermittently. The neural dampeners are offline, and species integration protocols have failed. We're losing more personnel to internal conflict than to human resistance. Zethkar's 6 eyes blazed with rage as he contemplated the irony. These primitive humans had inadvertently discovered the Empire's greatest vulnerability. The artificial unity that held the Imperial military together was dependent on technology that could be disrupted by electromagnetic warfare. But as reports of internal strife reached him, Zethkar also received intelligence that changed his understanding of the tactical situation. The humans weren't just defending anymore. They were attacking with coordinated precision that suggested a level of organization impossible without electronic communication. The answer came from the most unexpected source, the city's infrastructure itself. Dr. Sarah Chen emerged from the subway tunnels beneath Grand Central Station, her clothes torn and her hands covered in grease from improvised mechanical repairs. Around her, a team of electrical engineers worked frantically to complete humanity's most desperate communication network. Status report, demanded General Morrison, who had established his command post in the hardened subway system. "We've successfully hardwired communication nodes throughout the tunnel system," Dr. Chen reported. "Physical cables, mechanical switches, no electronics that can be disrupted by electromagnetic interference. We have real-time coordination capability across the entire borough." Morrison nodded grimly. While the alien technology had been devastated by the electromagnetic pulse, human engineering had adapted with characteristic ingenuity. Telegraph systems, mechanical calculators, and hardwired communication networks had been hastily constructed from salvaged materials, giving humanity a significant coordination advantage over their disrupted enemies. "What about the alien internal conflicts?" Morrison asked. "Intelligence reports confirm that their forces are fragmenting," replied Colonel Martinez through the hardwired communication system. "Whatever was holding their coalition together has failed. They are fighting each other as much as they are fighting us." Morrison allowed himself a moment of strategic satisfaction. The electromagnetic weapon had been designed to disable alien technology, but its secondary effects were proving even more valuable. By disrupting the Empire's command and control systems, humanity had turned the alien military into its own worst enemy. "Order all units to exploit the chaos," Morrison commanded. "Hit them while they are disorganized. Make them pay for every meter of our soil they've occupied." The counterattack began at dawn, with human forces emerging from subway tunnels, building foundations, and source systems like a coordinated swarm. But this wasn't the desperate resistance of the previous day. This was systematic urban warfare executed with mechanical precision. Human squads struck alien positions from multiple directions simultaneously, exploiting confusion as Imperial forces fought each other. Improvised explosive devices detonated in perfect sequence, creating corridors of destruction that channeled alien movements into prepared killing grounds. Sniper teams eliminated alien officers, further degrading what remained of Imperial command structure. Private Kim found himself advancing through streets that had been no man's land just hours earlier. Around him, his squad moved with practiced efficiency, using hand signals and predetermined tactics that required no electronic coordination. They had become something the aliens couldn't understand, a military force that functioned more effectively without technology than with it. "Contact front," whispered Sergeant Rodriguez, raising his fist to halt the squad's advance. 3 aliens, fighting each other. Through the smoke-filled intersection, Kim could see 3 different alien species engage in a vicious firefight. Their weapons were advanced, their armor sophisticated, but they were more focused on killing each other than watching for human threats. "Let them finish each other off," Rodriguez decided. "We'll clean up whoever survives." But as they watched, something extraordinary happened. A group of alien soldiers, members of a species Kim didn't recognize, suddenly turned their weapons on their Imperial commanders and began fighting alongside isolated human defenders trapped in a nearby building. The rebellion that had begun as technical failure was becoming something more dangerous to the Empire, a genuine uprising of conquered species who saw in humanity's resistance an opportunity for their own freedom. Commander Zethkar received the reports with growing horror. Not only were his forces fragmenting along species lines, but some units were actively defecting to the human side. The electromagnetic pulse had done more than disable Imperial technology. It had broken the psychological conditioning that kept the Empire's diverse military forces unified. "So," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving surrender requests from multiple units. The Rothak contingent is requesting asylum with human forces. The Kithran tech specialists want to share Imperial technology in exchange of protection." Zethkar's mandibles clicked in fury. The Empire's greatest strength, its ability to incorporate conquered species into its military structure, had become its greatest weakness. Without the neural control systems, his unified fleet was revealing itself to be a collection of oppressed peoples who had been waiting for an opportunity to rebel. "Signal all loyal units," he commanded. "Full withdrawal to the ship. Prepare for orbital bombardment of our own position." The order represented the ultimate military admission of failure. Rather than accept defeat, Zethkar was prepared to destroy his own forces along with the human city. The Dreadnought's weapons could still function on backup power, and a direct bombardment would eliminate both the human resistance and the rebellious alien forces. But as Imperial troops began their fighting withdrawal toward the crash site, they discovered that humanity had one final surprise waiting for them. The sound began as a low rumble that seemed to emerge from the Earth itself. Throughout Manhattan, mechanical air raid sirens, devices that required no electronics to operate, began wailing in perfect synchronization. The sound was soon joined by church bells, car horns, and thousands of human voices raised in defiant song. From every direction, human reinforcements poured into the battle zone. Not just military units, but civilians armed with hunting rifles, police officers with riot gear, firefighters carrying axes and determination. The electromagnetic pulse that had devastated both sides' technology had also eliminated the barriers between military and civilian resistance. Colonel Martinez watched the converging from her elevated position, feeling a surge of emotion she hadn't experienced since the invasion began. This wasn't just a military counterattack, it was an entire population rising to defend their home. "All units, this is actual," she broadcast through the hardwired communication network. "You are witnessing the birth of the human resistance. Every man, woman, and child in the city is now a combatant. Show our visitors what it means to threaten Earth." The final assault began with a coordinated charge that would have been impossible with electronic coordination, but worked perfectly with mechanical timing. Human forces attacked from every direction simultaneously, supported by defecting alien units who knew Imperial weak points and tactical doctrines. Commander Zethkar watched from the Dreadnought bridge as his perimeter collapsed under the overwhelming assault. His remaining loyal forces were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that had transformed from a primitive species into something he had never encountered before, a unified planetary resistance that included both humans and his own rebellious troops. "So," gasped his tactical officer, "human forces are at the outer hull. They are using shaped charges to breach our armor. Estimate 15 minutes until they reach critical systems." Zethkar stared at the tactical display, watching as red indicators marked human penetration throughout his ship. These creatures had done something no enemy in Imperial history had accomplished. They had not only defeated an Imperial fleet, but had turned the Empire's own soldiers against their commanders. As explosive charges echoed through the dreadnought's hull, Zefkar made his final decision. He activated the ship's self-destruct sequence, determined to deny the humans their victory even if it meant destroying Manhattan in the process. But Dr. Sarah Chen and her team of engineers had been preparing for this possibility. As alarms sounded throughout the alien vessel, they completed the most audacious project yet: the mechanical disabling of a dreadnought's fusion reactors using nothing more than crowbars, wire cutters, and human ingenuity. The self-destruct sequence failed as physical connections were severed and mechanical safeties were manually engaged. The mighty Imperial dreadnought that had fallen from the sky to crush humanity became instead the symbol of humanity's victory, a conquered enemy vessel in the heart of their greatest city. Commander Zefkar was found 3 hours later, barricaded in his command center with the last of his loyal guards. When Colonel Martinez approached under a flag of truce, she found an alien commander who no longer resembled the confident Imperial officer who had emerged from hyperspace just days earlier. "Your terms?" Zefkar asked, his voice hollow with defeat. "Unconditional surrender," Martinez replied. "All Imperial forces lay down their weapons. All occupied territories are evacuated. All conquered species in your fleet are granted immediate freedom." Zefkar's 6 eyes studied the human officer who had orchestrated his defeat. "You realize that this victory is temporary? The Empire will send another fleet. A larger fleet." Motina smiled grimly as she looked out over the ruins of Manhattan, where humans and liberated alien species worked together to clear rubble and tend to the wounded. In the distance, she could see other Imperial ships burning in Earth's atmosphere, their crews either dead or surrendering to human forces around the globe. "Let them come," she said quietly. "We'll be ready." As the sun set over New York City, the first day of humanity's interstellar age came to an end. The species that had been marked for extinction had instead become the catalyst for the Empire's first major military defeat. In the ruins of their greatest city, humans and aliens worked together to build something new, a resistance that would spread beyond Earth to every corner of the galaxy. The Empire had sent a fleet to crush Earth without warning, without mercy, seeking only annihilation. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have imagined: humanity's infinite capacity to adapt, survive, and transform even the darkest defeat into the foundation of ultimate victory. The war for Earth was over. The war for freedom had just begun.